Good morning, everybody. This is another one of my property tax educations seminars. And okay, so I believe when you're representing a buyer, it is very important that you know the assessed amount of a property, because you're going to come across properties that have very, very low taxes, and they need to be informed that once the exemptions that are currently on the property are eventually going to drop off. So their payment may be low at the beginning, but then eventually it will catch up with them. And the lender is going to normally base the escrow on the current taxes. And then, of course, when you don't have enough money in your escrow account, when these exemptions drop off, you're responsible to catch it up, so, and you have a choice. You can pay the shortage in your escrow account up front, or they will divide that by 12 months. So not only will your taxes go up by the shortage, 1/12 of the shortage, but also with the new taxes. So it can be very detrimental to your buyer if they're not aware of what is going to happen. You'll get that phone call, and I was talking to a few of you before, and a lot of times when they escrow, they're not aware of what's going on in their escrow accounts until they get a notice from the lender. So check the assessed value, check what exemptions are on the property that are reducing the assessed value. And then taxes are based, assessed value minus the exemptions times the tax rate equals the total property taxes due. Now, if you look at a Peoria tax bill, the garbage fee is on there. That is not, so when you get that total taxes, that includes the $252 for the garbage fee. If you look at a tax bill, what is down on the right-hand side is the taxes. That's what's going to get prorated. And then you have to leave it to the city of Peoria. It's very confusing. So when you get the tax bill, it's for last year's taxes, but the garbage fee is for this year's garbage fee. So you will see that proration at the settlement statement, that if the seller has paid the whole year's garbage fee, he's going to get a credit from the buyer for what's left on that. Okay, so it gets a little confusing, but just remember, you may get a phone call from your buyer that says, you didn't give me the right proration when we closed the property. And yes, they did. It's just that $252 garbage bill makes a difference. So I've had to explain that to several buyers. Okay. Luckily, now we have to disclose what exemptions the property is getting at the time of list, okay, which helps. That should really flag you to go on and check it. Okay, here's the most common exemptions. Owner occupied, $6,000. $6,000 is going to come off the assessed value. The assessed value is usually 1/3 of what the market value is. So if you've got $100,000, just for an example, I'm going to make it easy. You've got a $150,000 house, 1/3 is $50,000. So the $6,000 would come off the $50,000 before the tax rate is applied. Now, this exemption is not prorated. So that house that they're buying has to have shown that it was owner occupied by someone on January 1. If you are buying a foreclosure, sometimes you need to look, they will not have that owner occupied exemption as of January 1. It depends on when the lender took over. It happened to my son. An example was they foreclosed on it like in November. He bought it in February. The owner occupied was not on there January 1. He gets a tax bill for the next year that is not what was posted because it didn't have any exemptions on it. So it has to be owner occupied by someone on January 1. So if you bought it from an owner, it's just going to carry over because it has always been owner occupied. Okay. The homestead exemption. When you turn 65, and I got it, yay, you get an additional $5,000 exemption. So now you're owner occupied, you turn 65, now you get $11,000 off the assessed value. You only have to apply for that once. That's a good thing. Now, Tazewell County, now they may change. Like I said, Tazewell does not have the new packets out. Peoria County does. Peoria County posted that you do not, all the exemptions that were on the property previous to coronavirus will stay. You don't have to renew. But normally, Tazewell County wants you to go down in person to file that $5,000 initial exemption. You don't have to in Peoria County. I just emailed it in. That if you are 65 years and older and you bought a new home in June, it wasn't your home on January 1st, you bought it in June, you still need to sign up for that because they will prorate that for 6 months. If you've owned your home throughout the years and you turn 65, you get the whole $5,000 for the year. Okay. Right. Okay. Senior freeze. You have to renew that every single year. They did raise the income that you can make to $65,000. Be aware that it is the total household income. I've not been able to apply for it because my son lives with me. So, and I have to take into consideration his income. So it is total household income. Now on a senior freeze, if an elderly person went into a home, say Bueller home, a nursing home, they will continue to get that freeze until it is sold. That is very important that whoever is handling taxes for mom or dad, that they make sure that they get that freeze in. And usually the form says that you need it in by September of the year that you're filing. But I have seen them, at least Peoria County, I have seen Peoria County accept them even in the first of the year. You'll see a lot of estates that they might have passed away during that year. You'll see the attorney filling that out and getting it sent in so that they don't have to give that much of a tax proration. I even forgot to do my mother's one year, and I got her tax bill without that senior freeze, and I went, oh my God, I forgot. Well, I called them up. They said, just go ahead, Becky, get it sent in. And then they sent me an advised tax bill. Peoria County is really, really good to work with in that case. They do respect our elderly. So, okay. Now, the senior freeze. A senior freeze does not transfer from one property to the other. In other words, if you're a senior and you sold the property that you were getting a senior freeze on, and you went and bought another one that did not have a senior freeze, you will have to wait until January. You have to live in the property 2 January 1s. So let's say that you bought the property in the middle of June of 18. You're occupied it on January of 19. Then on January 1 of 2020, you can apply for that freeze, and those are the taxes that'll be due in 21. It does not transfer over. So you're starting all over again on a new piece of property. Now, if you have any questions, I've got Jack looking. So I don't want to go too fast that you're not going to So if you have any questions, or you can wait until the end. Now, on the senior freeze, the surviving spouse will get the senior freeze. There's a lot of rules on these exemptions where a surviving spouse will retain the senior freeze, even if he passed away. Okay, and it does not free the taxes. I'm going to go back. Just pretend I went back. It does not freeze taxes. If the tax rate goes up, the taxes will go up, okay? You're just freezing the assessed value. Okay, veterans with disabilities. I don't know about you, but I have seen so many properties now that have this exemption, where if it is a service-connected disability, and I don't know why the increase so much, but they can get, and it's the 70% or more, where properties do not have any real estate taxes on them. You will, if you pull up a tax bill and it's only got $252 on it, they're only paying for their garbage because they have applied for this disability, this homestead exemption for veterans. So before this program, I called the lender that I normally work with because I wanted to ask her, how do you deal when you come across a property that has no taxes? Because they have to use what is on the title work. So they tell, and every lender is going to be different. So in case a lender's watching this, I'm going to strongly ask you to call the lender to find out how they're going to deal with this. This particular lender, when the underwriter qualifies them, they've got a formula that they use that will qualify them at least for some taxes, okay? Then their loan officer is going to tell them that they need to set aside so much taxes, because when that drops off, you're going to be hit with a huge tax bill. For example, I know that there was one on like I've seen them as high as $200,000 houses that have had absolutely no taxes. Now, like I said before, when you see this, you're going to go look up those taxes. You're going to inform the buyer on what it's assessed at. You're going to inform the buyer that he's going to get an owner occupied, and you're going to be able to figure with the most recent information that you have, you're going to be able to figure what those taxes should be the following year. So you're going to be able to tell them you need to set aside $200 a month, put it in a separate account, because eventually when this comes off, these taxes are going to go up to this amount. I wish this was a class so you guys can ask me questions. But does everybody understand that? This is extremely, because just like anything, they could lose their house. I mean, that could be a huge difference. You know, they divide taxes by 12 months. That's much larger than dividing a mortgage over 30 years. So they could run the risk of not being able to pay for their property. Okay. Okay. The natural disaster homestead. I don't have, that is, of course, everybody remembers, if they don't, when a tornado went through Washington. Okay. So in layman's terms, when they rebuilt their house, and we all know how much it costs to rebuild a house, and you know, some of those were pretty exorbitant. I mean, they put a huge house to replace their little ranch that got blown away. They can file for a homestead exemption that's going to get the exemption will be the difference from what their house was when it was destroyed to what it is worth now. Once that property is sold, that disaster homestead drops off. So the new buyer will pay taxes on what it is valued at in today's market. I've not ran across any of that, but I'm sure that there probably are some that are still out there with this homestead exemption on it. Thank God we haven't had any other disasters like that one. Okay, here's some additional exemptions that you might look for that are could be on the property. An improvement exemption. If somebody added on a sunroom, they're going to go down and file so that they're not hit with that excess on their tax bill for 4 years. After 4 years, it's going to drop off. You can ask for up to a $75,000 value, which would mean that would help your taxes by 25, 1/3. So be aware of that. I haven't ran across that too much either. It's not real common. The disability exemption. So if you're not a veteran, but you are considered disabled, you get SSI. You can sign up for a $2,000 disability exemption, which has to be renewed every year. It's really simple to get it. When you go on, I should tell you that when you go on and look up somebody's property taxes, when you go to peoriacounty.org, to get all these downloadable forms, just go to the bottom and you got to click and you can pick out any form that is available. But the disability exemption is just for ones that have not been in war. Now, you cannot take a veteran's disability and a disability. You can pick only one disability exemption. So you want to pick the one that's going to give you the best reduction on your taxes, okay? Returning veterans homestead exemption, that's not very common. That is if an act of war and they come back and they get a break on their taxes, but it is a $5,000 exemption. So I'm not going to go through that. You can read that for yourself if you happen to have a returning veteran. Okay, now, protesting your taxes. The appeals can be based on a recent purchase. That's your easiest one, okay? So you have a property that they purchased it for considerably less than what the fair market value is. You fill out the form, you send in the appraisal, the entire appraisal, and the P-tax, and you get that P-tax at closing. That's why it's so important that you upload whatever you're getting at closing into a file so that if your seller or your buyer cannot find it, you can help them with that. If the purchase price is less than the appraisal, they will use the appraisal amount. So it's whatever is the highest of the two things that you're sending in, all right? Tazewell County will require 2 copies of the settlement statement and the P-tax. Now, when you have a recent purchase, when you fill out the appeal form, you are going to check that you wish to appear or you will not appear. Usually on a recent purchase, we do not appear because we've got enough information for them to see, and they will usually reduce it, okay? Now, the equity, that means that you have a higher assessment than other sellers in the neighborhood. And you, unfortunately, have to fill out a grid sheet. It's not that hard. Let me go through this. I'll show you. Okay. Market, we'll go back. Okay, the market means that the assessed value is greater than what all the houses in the neighborhood have been selling for. It's kind of almost the same. You still have to fill out a grid sheet, but I'll show you when we get to the grid sheet, I'll show you. Incorrect assessor data. If you've got incorrect information on file with the county, call the assessor. That's the best way to get that done. but sometimes it doesn't work. I had a seller that called 3 years in a row to tell them that she did not have a basement, and every time the bill came out, it had a basement on it. So I said, forget it, we're going to protest your taxes. And I sent in a grid. And for us as realtors, it's really easy to do because you have comparables. It's like doing a CMA for your seller or your buyer. You have the comparables. I usually print out the MLS sheets, send it in along with the tax information, and I send it in. Okay, let's see. There's the grid. I did this one, and it's old, but I did it because when I had the property listed, it was assessed at a fair market value of $333,000, and I had it listed for $289,900. And of course, $8,000 taxes did not reflect a $289,000 house. So I filled this out and I sent in a letter pretending to be the seller. Okay. And I sent in all the list sheets. And as you can see, I had this because I did this for 18. We had purchase sale prices of 260, 265, 231. And if I go on, it's like 290. And if you look at the land assessment and building assessment, the difference in what this was. So I really had a strong case argument. And to get all this information, guys, this is really easy. When you go to peoriacounty.org, when you look up the tax information, go to the GIS characteristics, and over on the side, you'll have all that data that comes up with the owner's name, the property address, and scroll down, and you can get the grade, you can get the condition that the county has it in, you can get the land assessment, building assessment. It's really easy to fill in. And so I did this, and oops. Okay, I had 2 pages to this, guys, but I didn't upload them. And I sent it in, and I told them that what I thought the purchase price should be was $280, okay? Well, I got them down to $289, which made an $1,100 difference in their taxes. From $333 fair market value to $289. And when we closed on it, I told the new buyers, because they paid $266 for it, and I said, you probably will be able to protest those taxes again to get it down to the $266. And so now today, those taxes are $6,500. I looked it up before our seminar here. Okay, so that's Peoria County, guys. They're gonna have you do a little bit more work. Here's Tazewell counties. All you have to do is fill out the 3 properties that you want, that you're comparing it to, put down your reasons, and done. This is their grid. Much easier. I haven't done it. I did a Tazewell County just recently. I had a piece of property that I listed, and it was assessed at a fair market value of $190. And when I looked at that, and several agents had it listed before me, okay? So when I looked at his property card, I said, why haven't you protested your taxes? Because when I took it over, we listed it at $158. And he goes, oh, I know I should have. And I said, well, you know that that's not very attractive. I mean, somebody that qualifies for $150,000 price cannot afford this high of taxes. So I started, if you go to Tazewell County website right now, they do not have their new packets online. You get a notice that says, contact your township assessor. So I contacted in March the township assessor to tell her that I thought it was too high. Never got a call back, had to leave a message. I know the coronavirus put a damper on everything. So it got close to finally when I reduced the price to $149.9, and I thought to myself, I got to do something about this. So I found out who the township assessor was. He happens to be a realtor. I'm not going to throw out his name. And so I had his mobile number, and I called him and I said, I've been trying to get a hold of somebody because these taxes are way out of line. And of course, being new and not a job, he said, well, let me see if I can contact somebody. About a week later, he calls me and he says, now in the meantime, I get an offer on the property. And so he calls me, he says, are you sitting down? And I said, okay, yes. He said, we just got that fair market value down to 147 from 190. Do you realize how much I haven't figured it out, but that is huge tax savings for the new buyer. And it sold for 148. So the purchase price is going to fit what the county's going to have on a fair market value. So please be aware of what's going on behind the scenes when you're listing a property, okay? All right, here is a good example. This is not my listing, but it's public knowledge, so I can use it. So you will notice that this particular property was assessed at, the assessed was $27,550. To get the fair market value, you would multiply that times 3, and that is 81,000. Yeah, 81,000. It has a owner occupied exemption. It has the homestead of 5,000, and she froze her taxes quite a while ago. So she had a freeze of 12,590. Okay. Now, on a senior freeze, that could change every year, because what that increases as the assessed value increases. So they have to increase that to keep it at that frozen level. So you may see next year, it may go up to 13,000. That's because the assessed value went up. Okay, so if I had been representing this buyer at the time of purchase, I would have taken off these exemptions and told him what his taxes were going to be based on 27,550 minus the 6,000, so that he would get an idea of what his new tax bill is going to be. Now, what's good about this is that this buyer only paid $49,000 for the house. So I would protest. I don't know what the appraisal says. Let's say the appraisal says 55. He got a deal on it. Okay. So I would protest his taxes to get that assessment down from the 27,550 to the either the purchase price or the appraised amount, so that when that senior freeze and the 5,000 drops off, he is going to pay taxes on the new protested value. And I hope I haven't confused you anyway, but that means that your buyer will get the best taxes possible. Now it may go up the next year, but on the appeal, they ask you if you protested last year. So protesting every year might not be to your advantage, but protesting every other year or every few years to get it down to what the market is would be advisable for sellers, for homeowners to do. So there's that. Okay, and then I gave you guys some websites to go to. Now, you can send in the appeals now, all right? And if you have a recent sale, I would go ahead and send it in, because you really don't have to wait for the assessments. You've got the appraisal, you've got the P-tax, go ahead and send it in. But if you are doing the equity or the market value, then once the new assessments come out, once they're published, then you've got 30 days from the published date to send in the complaints. Now, if you are mailing them in, the complaint has to be postmarked the day, that 30th day. It's just kind of like IRS taxes, you know. Last year, the Peoria County, you had to have everything in by, I thought that I wrote that down somewhere. Yes, I did. Okay, Peoria County, last year you had until 9/30/2019. Now, sometimes the assessed value, the new assessed value is online before it's published, okay? Now, East Peoria is a little bit, Tazewell County was a little bit quicker. I think it was the middle of September. Woodford County was in December. That's how behind they are on doing their complaints and assessments. Okay, let me make sure yeah, Woodford County deadline to appeal was 12/23/19. Okay, and in Tazewell County, this was interesting when I was, of course it may change with coronavirus, but when you apply for your senior freeze in Tazewell County, they want to see your 1040 tax return. So they want to see that you're not, they want to verify that you're really below that 65,000 or below. Okay. All right. Jack, do I have any questions?
First question, Michelle Tribe wants to know, is the assessed value, is it 30% or is it 33.3%?
I just divide it by 3.
Okay.
It's close enough. It's like a $10, $20 difference. So whatever
Right.
whatever the assessed value is, I multiply it times 3. And it's really close that it's not going to make any difference.
Okay.
Now, we've been fortunate enough that our equalization factor, that if your equalization factor is more than 1%, but the years that I've been doing this, I've never seen one in the Peoria County that's above the 1. That would make a little bit of a difference. That might raise that assessed value a little bit. And technically, it is assessed value times equalization factor minus the exemptions. That's technically, but when you multiply by 1, it's, you know, there's no difference. Does that make sense? So if someday we see an equalization factor, let's say 1.25, that's going to raise the assessed value a little bit that you're going to minus. I don't foresee that, but okay, go ahead, Jack.
All right. On a home improvement exemption, if the property is sold before the 4 years is up, is it transferred to the new owner?
Yes. It does not drop off the property. They will get that benefit for whatever's remaining. That's why it's important to call, and I've had to call down to the county to find out when it is going to drop off so that I can inform my buyer of that.
If a home is bought with cash without a bank appraisal, how do you appeal that?
I probably would send in some comparables that showed that you were paying a fair market value for it. Might want to get an appraisal done. And normally an appraisal when you order it on your own is a little bit cheaper than what the lender charges you. So I'm just saying.
All right.
Now, let me clarify something else though. All properties are not overly assessed. Not all properties. Matter of fact, some properties are underassessed. So there's no indication, you've got to tell your buyer, just because it's assessed at this much doesn't mean that that's what the market value is today. Could be somebody that's lived in the house for years and years and years, okay? So there really is no correlation. You have to go by what the market is doing. And I will tell you that all these counties have access to our sold data. So they know they can go online and see what property is sold for.
Okay. Julie wants to know what happens when there aren't any comparables.
If there isn't any comparables, then okay. You can go out of the area, but then you have to have a really good explanation of why you have to go out. Luckily, the ones that I did were in neighborhoods that I had a lot of comparables. We're talking Copperfield. The last one was Sunset Hills and Pekin. You have a lot of comparables, but there are those, that you might have to pay for an appraisal. But the appraiser's going to have to go out of the area too. So.
Hey, Becky, could I ask you a question? It was my question,
Yeah.
but to follow up on it, when you say go out of the area.
Go out of the neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Go out of the neighborhood. Yeah.
There's a second part to my question. If you had mentioned looking at, the GIS, the homes characteristics.
Yes.
To get all these comparables. What happens if you match a lot of the home's characteristics, the bedrooms, the square footage, everything, except for the fact where the homes do not compare is one is an older home that's completely been like renovated, remodeled, redone, and the other home is a new construction. Does that disqualify it as a comparable?
Probably not. I mean, you'd have an explanation, but that's another thing is when you go through, they want the comparables to be as close as possible. 2 stories to 2 stories, ranches to ranches, neighborhood, the condition. If you notice, the one that I did, the conditions were pretty much the same. And those conditions were not made by the realtor, they were made by the county, what they feel the condition is.
But I've been told by an assessor that a new construction, she does not compare new construction to older construction, no matter how, I don't know, it was kind of an off the table topic. It was interesting.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so what are you saying? Are the taxes on the new construction higher than the ones on the one that you remodeled?
Yeah, in this example it was. And I think people also don't realize that, and I don't know if this is the case in all counties, but we're being taxed on our outdoor patios.
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
have it. Well, I know that we're paying because it's not, the water isn't going into the ground, so I know we're being taxed that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Okay.
I've not seen that on a data sheet. Patio. See, you'll get, the counties go above grade square footage, if you'll notice when you pull that data up. Then on the basement, they'll say recreation. That's usually what they have finished in the lower level. Now, if I had an older house that I remodeled, my taxes, I would think that they would be lower than the new construction. And I probably wouldn't want the county to be aware. I hope they're not listening. I hope they didn't log in. But I probably would kind of keep that a secret. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But if they paid a lot of money for a house that was remodeled and it's assessed lower, don't say anything. You know what I mean? you have to kind of weigh it. If you're paying taxes on something less than what you paid for the house, you're not going to protest and you're not going to make them aware of it. It eventually will catch up, but don't, you know, don't raise a red flag. So I'm not sure how you went, but you'll have to call me and we'll look at that. Any other questions, Jack?
Yes. What is the general timeline for protesting in Peoria?
Okay. I'm going to guess that it's probably going to be close to, right now you can protest June 1 until 30 days after they publish. Like I said, last year, it was the end of September. So they do not have the new assessments out. So if you're going to have to protest through market values or equity, I would probably wait until the new assessment comes out. But as far as a new purchase, the purchase date, like Jack, we talked, in Peoria, the purchase date must be within the prior 24 months, okay? And the entire appraisal needs to be submitted with the transfer declaration, which is the P-tax, guys. That's the transfer declaration. If you're submitting a sale older than 24 months, then you got to do that grid. You're safe, Jack. You should be able to do that. Did you find your appraisal?
Oh, no, I haven't looked yet.
Oh, okay.
Let's see so when you say published, is that when the homeowner receives it in the mail?
It's when they have to put it on some type of paper that they're out. That's published. Some type of, like, I think, what do they have over there, Chris? A courier? Do they still have a courier over there, or is that gone? I don't know. I would just keep looking it up to see if the new assessments are online and start then. And then there's also a link. I know there is one on Peoria County that will have the dates when every single township is due. And they're usually all the same. But there will be a link once they get the new assessments on that'll say when you have to have that complaint filed. I'm going to assume that Tazewell will have that also. And I'll keep
Okay.
everybody posted. I'll have PAAR send something out when I see the new assessments online. Then that means you got to start getting busy.
Venky would also like to know, when a home is bought in February 2020, by what day can he protest the taxes?
June 1st. I mean, he can start sending it in on a new purchase on June 1st. The application is online already.
He also would like to know, where can we find appraisers for appraising a property that was bought with cash? Just
The yellow pages.
Google.
Well, do they have yellow pages anymore? I don't know, but there's several appraisers out there. It wouldn't be hard. Google it, Peoria, City of Peoria appraisers. They should come up.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it.
Okay, well, I hope this helped everybody. And you know, you can get a hold of me if you have any questions, because I'll try to help as much as I can. I have done this several times, so. Okay, have a great
All right,
day,
thank you.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.